Welcome to the Invincible Innovation Show, the podcast for changemakers. Each week, I talk to the most fascinating entrepreneurs and innovation leaders about innovation, strategy, and design. Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about assessing your company readiness for innovation. And I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live Show. I'm Mazor, Kario, Innovation and Value Creation Expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me, I have two guests, Mike Byrne and Greg Galle. Great to see you here.
Good to see you.
Greg and Mike are co-founders for SolveNext. And we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're much invited to join the discussion and ask questions. We would love to have you with us. Okay, now we can start. Most leaders are not satisfied with their innovation results. How could the companies innovate better? That's a big question to start with, but we start with the big one, right?
Oh, the easy stuff first, right?
Yeah.
Mike, you want to kick off with that, or? Yeah, I think it's, what we've found over the years is, and this backs up McKinsey's study that, they said that 94% of executives are dissatisfied with the effectiveness of their innovation. And unfortunately, we see that personally, what that looks like. And then, we dove a bit deeper into it and say, is this a broad kind of issue? And what we discovered is that if you put your money into innovation, it is, in essence, certainly in the United States, the second worst performing asset class of any investment you could have made over 20 years. It's wow. The only worst thing you could have done is kept it in cash. So it's a real problem that, and I think the thing that we learn is that it's entirely undisciplined. So, you start looking at the results that we see are the results you expect when you see what goes into it. It's, if you ran the rest of your organization as you do your innovation part of your organization, this is exactly what you'd expect. It's undisciplined. There's no management rigor. There's no system in place. It's ad hoc. It's sporadic. So, you'll often, you see these kind of, let's have an innovation date, let's have a hackathon. That'd be like saying, let's do expenses 2 days a year. Let's do, financial regulations, or let's, who
wants to do the analyst call this quarter?
Exactly. They're seeking volunteers to do things. And it's like, if you ran the rest of your business like people are running the future of their business via innovation, it's exactly what you'd expect. And they just keep doing it. So it's this kind of idea of failing fast. It's like, well, the failing is we've learned this, and yet we keep doing it. So then you look, well, what's the exact opposite of that? And the exact opposite of that is that you want to put discipline and systems in place to manage innovation and then do that in a structured way.
And I think that, I do. I think that contradicts the way that people for a long time have thought about innovation, which is innovation. Those are the creative people in the organization, right? The cliche of the Steve Jobs black turtleneck wearing, the person who, like, we have some people, they're those kind of weird people in the organization who are they're kind of outliers, and it was in their interest to maintain this fallacy that don't put any rules in place, don't put any discipline in place, because I'm just going to do my thing, right? I'm going to
it's creative. We're
exactly.
creative.
I'm going to raise the Jolly Roger flag in front of the building. This is our place, and stay out of our playroom. And so it was in their interest to not have discipline, but it wasn't in the interest of the organization in terms of being productive. And what in fact, what we see is that when you do start to put some rigor in place, when you do start to put some means of managing and moving something from a hypothesis to a prototype to a tested solution that operates in the world, then those innovators, those entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs are much more successful. The executives are actually starting to, you start to see that their attitude towards innovation and the productivity and the benefit that they're getting from it is greatly improved. And you have this management level that starts to understand with a disciplined approach, how do I work with innovators? How do I move these projects through an organization? What information do our leaders need to actually make the crucial decisions that they have to make about where we're going to allocate resource, markets we're going to go into, policies or processes that we're going to put in place, et cetera. So I do, just to full disclosure, I went to art school, so I'm one of those people who doesn't like to have rules put on me, right?
So we're two from that part.
Yeah. So we come from that creative world, right? Where we don't want rules. But what we've learned and what we've seen is and it really came home. We were working with a client out of South Africa who's the CFO for one of the leading banks across sub-Saharan Africa, and he was expressing this frustration. I just wish there was a disciplined management approach for innovation. And we're like, oh, that you've just described what we have been seeing is missing, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I think that to get back to your question of what can people do to improve the performance of their innovation efforts, it is to start to really look at how do we apply the same sort of discipline, understanding that the rule set might be different, that the processes might be different, but the management mindset and the disciplined approach that you might apply to procurement, or you might apply to managing your manufacturing processes, or you might apply to how we handle our HR functions and payroll and benefits and so on. Organizations make investments, big investments in redefining their business processes to bring SAP or Oracle or right. Workday or one of these solutions into their environment. They make big investments in technology. They create roles. They train people. They give them the skills they need to do that work. But they don't do that on the innovation side.
Yeah. So in fact, the things they invest in are usually ping pong tables and kegs of beer and pizza. Yeah. It's like, that's what it takes. It's like you literally never do that. So there's a concept that we talk about that is again the rigor is what the capital investment that you're making, and that's what you're doing. You're making capital investments. But then understanding what capital that you're investing, it's not just monetary. There's financial capital you're investing, but you're also investing that precious treasure of human capital. Often you're putting your brand capital out into the marketplace. You're putting your political capital at risk inside your organization. And when you don't have a system, that capital just leaks out. It just leaks. So you're wasting huge amounts of capital, which is reflected in that horrible returns on innovation investment, and why we're seeing dissatisfaction. It's just like the signs are there, and they're not recent. If you look back, it's 20 years of this, and we've been talking about design thinking, innovation, all those things. What we've missed is that there needs to be a rigor. There needs to be a system that people can repeat, people can scale, and that's not reliant on this kind of flashes of lightning of genius within an organization and hope that it happens. It's this constant rumble of thunder that you see throughout, and that's continually going, that you can predict, and it's repeatable.
Yeah. So we have a few people joining us. So let's say hi to Vivian. Hi, Vivian. And Michael says, "This Think Wrong Strong. Love listening to these guys and gleaning insights from their innovation expertise. Go, Greg and Mike." So thanks, Michael.
Hey, Michael. Good to see you.
And Dale is saying, "I think the problem is that they run innovation exactly like the rest of the organization."
You're right.
Sometimes.
Yeah, we were just having a conversation with a group about these different roles that you observe in organizations, and when there's a high degree of certainty around what the problem set is and a high degree of certainty around what the solution set is, you can focus on things like optimizing the performance of the organization. You can look at efficiency and reducing costs and improving margins, all that stuff that we all get asked to do. But that's for when we're highly certain. And there's a whole raft of processes and policies and expectations in organizations that come there. And it's absolutely right. If you apply that to your innovation work, that's not going to work, because when you're doing innovation work, you're dealing with huge degrees of uncertainty. Operating in a realm of assumptions and discovery and experimentation. So the rule set is different. It's a different set of rules, and you can get people to enforce them, but you have to articulate them first, right? You have to sort of say, okay, what are the rules of the game? It can't be wait 6 months to procure something when I know that in 6 weeks, the competitor is going to be out with a better product, right? It needs to be a different rule set.
So, it's the difference between what is called explore and exploit. You can exploit something that you are sure of, and you should be able to explore differently things that you are not certain and unknowns. And when you do something new, there are many unknowns, that's for sure.
Adi, the other X that we like to add to that is the idea of exit, which is do you know when to exit things, and that is both things that we're doing, we're exploiting, but at some point we need to exit them because it's stealing resource from the explorer, right? It's taking resource away that we ought to be putting into the explorer that we can never get to. So it's invariably we run into organizations where people are saying, well, we just can't get the time, we can't get the money, we can't get the attention. It's like, because your organization's never figured out that everything's on exploit, and you haven't figured out explore, and you certainly haven't figured out exit. You've never managed that portfolio of things that you should no longer be doing. Right?
Regarding what you say about the exit, we have another LinkedIn user saying innovation is to know why, to know how, to know what, to know who is the best to do, and then love it, burn for it, finish it, enjoy it every hour. That's and finish it is connected to what you just said about the exit. Thank you for all people like joining us. So we're in the middle of the COVID crisis. I don't know if I would say the middle, but we're in it.
We're in there.
About the middle.
What are the challenges that innovation leaders are facing these days?
I'm going to jump on this one, Mike, and then I'll let you piggyback on it. What was really interesting, I just talked about this idea of moving from uncertainty to certainty. And when COVID hit, we were all pushed into the uncertain end of the pool, right? Any assumption or presumption that we had made about what the reality was gone. I can get on a plane to come visit you and have this conversation in person, right? I can rely on a supply chain to get materials to manufacturers. All of these things that we assumed were going to be true in the future were no longer there. We do a lot of work with Rita McGrath, who's a fantastic author and teacher at Columbia and consultant to leaders around the world in the innovation space. And she said the status quo just didn't exist anymore, right? The status quo went away. So we were all plunged into this huge amount of political uncertainty, regulatory uncertainty, financial, economic uncertainty, and we saw clients respond in one of two ways. Some basically retreated, right? They just we're going to just pull everything in. We're going to just conserve what we have and ride this thing out. And then we had others who started looking at it and saying, okay, we need to actually reset our strategy. We need to reset our goals. What are the things we're going to try to accomplish? We need to rethink our strategy, and then we need to reassess and rebalance our portfolio of activity really rapidly. Those clients are going to come out the other side of this so far ahead of those who retreated, those who are paralyzed by the uncertainty. It's going to be remarkable, I think, when we get to the other side. Sorry, Mike, I know you were about to say something too. But.
I totally agree.
It's kind of yes onto that, and that was I think people have a comfort and an assumption of basically the permanence of knowledge that we proved it, it's right, that's how it is, and you can predict it, and I think COVID showed that knowledge is incredibly transient. What is true, and we often we used to go from uncertainty to certainty, but I don't think there's ever such thing as certainty. We use a phrase of it's true for now. So it's that idea that something's true for now. It's true now, but it may not be later. So that idea that you had so much stuff that was true that for now just changed. So it's that was, I think, hugely challenging, and their entire operations and organization was built for that permanence. We're optimizing it, we're looking at margins, we're improving it, and it's just gone. It totally went. And what they didn't have is that alternate set of rules, and there's alternate processes, and there's alternate systems, and even the people in place to deal with the uncertainty. They just didn't know what to do. So it's kind of like, keep going, Just,
Yeah.
and then that's when we start seeing that capital leakage. That, you know, they're just hemorrhaging capital, not just financial, but, you know, the human, the opportunity, the brand, everything just leaking out because they didn't have a way to deal with it. They just didn't know what to do. Whereas I think a very healthy organization would just start moving things around their portfolio and say, look, we had this in the back pocket. It was, you know, it had high option value on timing. We knew that we could do it. We knew we could scale it because we've invested in things with high option value. That's how we manage our portfolio. We're just going to start exercising options. Whereas people were just like, they didn't have it. They just, you know, we just saw people stunned, struggled, didn't know what to do. That the way they were dealing with it was entirely mismatched to the actual reality of the world. And, you know, then we start seeing people going, you know, is this going to go on for 2 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it more? Is it permanent? I don't know. So we're now starting to see people, you know, realize that their portfolios are massively unbalanced.
Yeah.
And, you know, things they're doing are wrong. So we're starting to see that, you know, we have to do something. The realization is setting in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Addie, I think that was really interesting. We really saw a shift in the last 2 quarters of the year where people started to come and say, hey, we need help looking at our portfolio. We need to rationalize it. We need to rebalance it. And so they sort of embrace that idea. We need to look at it as a portfolio. We need to have a system of governance. We need to make some decisions right now and reset the strategy. But it took, you know, it definitely took getting through the second quarter for some people, and some didn't. Some people are still trying to cut their way through it. Well, you have a friend named Christopher Lockhead, a pretty well-known chief marketing officer who's very influential, and he had this saying of, we'll put another log on the fire as soon as it warms up in here. You know, it's like, you can't really get to success by doing that. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I totally agree.
The heat's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's connected to 2 things. One is like innovation is like insurance. You need to do it before you really, really need it, because when you really need it, you know, it's a bit late.
Yeah.
And another thing is like how people relate to fear and anxiety, because the unknown make everyone anxious, and leaders too. And would they freeze and say, okay, I'm not going to do anything, maybe it will pass, or not? And since it took so long, in the beginning, most of people say, okay, it will go in 2 or 3 weeks or months, and it's just fine. And once these 2 or 3 months went on, they said, okay, so probably things change, and now we need to get things done. So it's really understanding what's going on.
I think if you go back down the chain, what happened is that the reality is that whatever goals you had in February 2020 were irrelevant in March 2020. So therefore, what you had to do, and I think this is what a lot of people fail to do, was reassess their goals. And therefore, the minute you reassess your goals, what you should do is reassess your strategy, because you have different goals. You can't have the same strategy for different goals. That doesn't make sense. It's like if we had the goal of climb a mountain or cross a river, you have to have 2 different strategies. So the minute, you know, I don't think people change their goals fast enough, or, you know, they just didn't. So therefore, and then the strategies didn't change. And then if your strategies change, your portfolio of, you know, things that you should be doing should change. And then what are your strategies for each of those portfolios? They need to change. That just didn't happen for so many people. They didn't, you know, I don't think they knew how to do it, because they were just running along fat and happy, frankly. You know, we had a great economy for 12 years. And they didn't have anything in the back pocket. They didn't have options. They were just, their option was optimize and increase performance, not you know, have that flexibility in their organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. So now we're going to talk about intrapreneurial, that's a hard word, Intrapreneurial Readiness Assessment that you have, and what are the conditions that companies need in order to be successful in innovation? That's another hard one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the Intrapreneurial Readiness Assessment came out of the work we're doing, and this does relate to, it's going to connect to everything we've been talking about in terms of the need for a clear system. And part of that system is a clear process that says, okay, we understand what the stages of evolution of a solution are, right? We know that we start with a goal, right? We have a strategy, and then we start to develop some hypotheses around what are the needs, or the pains, or the frictions or tensions in the marketplace, the from to shifts that we're trying to create, and that's where the innovation starts to come in place. And then what does that journey look like? And as we started framing what we call the next cycle, there are lots of other words for it, and the framing would be pretty familiar, from formulating a hypothesis to incubating, testing, and validating, to acceleration, into operation, and then scaling and growing. As you work your way through that, what we wanted to do was help our clients understand how ready are we for each stage of that development cycle. As we go from one part of the next cycle into the next, how ready is the organization to do the work that needs to be done there? How good are we at articulating strategy and formulating hypotheses around where the opportunities are? How good are we at actually validating the need for something that's actually wanted? How good are we at actually testing whether something is doable, whether it's feasible to create it? How good are we at evaluating what the worth of something is, if it's worth doing it, if it's going to produce the value that we need to make it worthwhile? So we needed to help our clients with that, but we didn't need to just help their entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs. We didn't need to just help the practitioners who were being tasked with doing this work. We actually needed to look at how ready are the managers to run that process, and how ready are the executives to govern it, right? And so what we developed was a readiness assessment that would look at, first of all, is the organization feeling enough pain to actually do something about this, right? Are people aware of the need? Is there a burning platform of some sort that says we actually need to be innovating? Or does it just have a culture that's compelled to continuously improve and generate and create new things? Some cultures don't have a burning platform, but they're wired that way. We have a business management consulting client who, they brought us in to help them get the 2 candidates out of the 10 that said no to them. It's like, well, you're doing pretty well if 8 are saying yes. They said, yeah, but we want to get the other 2, right? So they were just compelled to excel constantly. So how ready is an organization to do that, and do the people at every level of your organization have the language, the frameworks, the tools and skills that they need to do that work? So that's really what the Intrapreneurial Readiness Assessment is designed to do. It comes in 5 parts. Anybody who wants to go to SolveNext.com, you can find the Intrapreneurial Readiness test there. You can take it, and you can see sort of where you stack up. The other thing was, we knew that we needed to be benchmarking for our clients. Where are you right now? So as you make this investment in the system, are you seeing improvements in the areas that where you're weakest? And what we do actually, as you take that assessment, is you'll get boosters that suggest for each of the stages, what are the 3 things you could do that would create the biggest improvement in your score. And so it was really a way of just taking our clients by the hand and helping them sort of create that benchmark, understand where they are and where they should be focusing their energy. Because you can't build and implement these systems all at once. You can't do it all at once. You have to focus on where are we going to start and where can we make the biggest difference. Mike, I guess in hindsight, it's not so surprising, but when we started getting to a certain level of responses in the system and started to see the data that was coming out of it, we were really surprised by one result, which is kind of stunning when you think about it. But Mike, you want to share the?
Yeah. The stages, we call it the formulation stage, and people are, I would say almost universally atrocious at this, and that is finding the right problems, validating the problems, and managing that portfolio. It's just like, we often hear about, everybody submit an idea, and everyone submits the ideas and they vote on them, and they do all that sort of work. But But what they don't do is they don't tie it to a real pain that exists that it relates to a real strategy that relates to the real goal that the organization has. So it's like you can be producing great stuff, that's a fantastic idea, but it's entirely unhinged from what it's going to take to meet our goals. And that is, again, reflected in that 94% of executives are dissatisfied with, the effectiveness of innovation, is because innovation is often entirely unhinged from that. So it's like people aren't going out and building what we call a portfolio of pain. They're not going out and saying, given our strategy, who matters most to us in that strategy? What pains are they feeling? What problems are causing those pains? Have we prioritized that portfolio of problems? And are we creating solutions to address those portfolios? And then when our strategy changes because our goal changes because COVID comes along, are we reassessing all of that? And the answer is universally no. People are just, that was surprising to me how bad that was. I thought we were going to have this problem with incubation and acceleration, but I think what's happened is that companies are actually getting pretty good at that. There's this lean startup, there's those approaches that people are taking and they know what to do. But, it's like, so if that's happening, why is return so bad? Why is satisfaction so poor? It's like, it's because they're doing it against the wrong things entirely.
We have a client that has over 250 innovation initiatives going on worldwide.
Wow.
250. They have somewhere around 12 what they call the innovation hubs that these projects are running out of. They could not tell you at what point were they in the development cycle. They couldn't tell you how much they'd spent. They couldn't tell you what the strategic goal is that they're aligned with. They couldn't tell you what the current understanding of the pain was of the constituents who they were supposed to be building these solutions for. So that's just an extreme example of leadership that's under pressure to innovate. We need to innovate, right? So we're putting a certain amount of our budget into innovation. It's getting distributed across the organization, and it's a great example of capital leakage, what Mike was talking about. And so it's for clients like that where he said, well, we got to step back and we've got to look at, on this journey that you're going to be going on, what are the skills and capabilities, the competencies that you need to have as an organization to actually go from one stage to the next, to take something from a hypothesis, from a goal to a hypothesis to an initial concept of a solution to something that you're testing, and that's going to actually be real, and that you're going to be able to hand off to the rest of the organization to operate. What needs to happen there? The scale, it goes from 0 to 5. Just to give you an indication of Mike's being generous when he says people are sort of mastering incubation and acceleration. Right now the index there is the baseline for everybody who's taken the assessment is 1.35 for incubation readiness against 5. So they're in the struggling range. Acceleration readiness is 1.02, so struggling. Formulation readiness is 0.57. So 0.57 against 5, that they're in the weakening. So it reflects a fragile state of readiness, right? That just says that organizations are, and that's the place where you must get it right to begin with. Like if you don't have the formulation piece right, if the goals and the strategy and the assumptions about where the real problem is, then you're working on the wrong things. You have no way of knowing if you're working on the right thing or the wrong thing. It's like the old advertising saying, well, we know 50% of our advertising works and 50% of it doesn't. We just don't know which 50%, right? It's like, okay, great.
Yeah, it's like what you're saying makes so much sense, because most people, when they think about innovation, they're thinking about ideation and great ideas and creative ideas and all the fun, and
fun stuff.
Fun stuff. Yeah. But fun stuff is like, I would say even 5% from the work, more or less, right? Yep. And when people imagine being an entrepreneur, they imagine someone doing lots of like creative stuff and like fun, out of the box things, right?
Right.
But actually, they need to do so much more than that, and have the rigor and have the capabilities just to handle it.
Yep.
And when you're thinking only about very small things and you're not attaching it to what you want to achieve, what is your goals, in most cases you will not get there. So
you won't get there, and that's what leads to that statistics that we cite all the time from the McKinsey research, which shows that 94% of CEOs are dissatisfied with the return on their investment from their innovation. Well,
I say 3% are fooling themselves too.
Yeah,
half of that 6% they still know.
And it kind of makes sense if you think about that 20-year period. Like, okay, what happened? We would all proclaim that the last 20 years are the most innovative time in human history. Well, maybe not. We got the iPod and the iPhone, and we got cloud computing, right? And and a few other things. But so we had some major innovations. We had some companies that did extraordinarily well. But the reality is, if we take that statistic, it's less than 6% of the companies in the world that did really well. And then the rest are trying to replicate that magical act somehow, as opposed to saying, how do we actually master this as a discipline like any other discipline that we engage in as whether that, and I'm talking about whatever kind of organization you are. So whether that's a for-profit, a commercial enterprise, whether that's a foundation or a nonprofit, or if it's a government agency, or if it's a defense, somebody in the defense space, like our friend Michael who was there, it applies across. We always say this is sort of sector and problem agnostic. These are truths that apply across all of those.
Yeah, I totally understand. So what do you think?
Ali, the bit that you got to, it's that idea that people say, well, do you want to have fun or impact?
Yeah.
It's like, innovation is very fun. It's like, but it's little
fun.
impact.
Yeah, it's fun.
What do you think is the most powerful way to overcome business crisis? And many of the companies right now are like in the midst of a crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I touched on it earlier, which is that idea of the first thing is reassess your goals, because everything falls down from an honest assessment of what your goals are. Because from your goals falls your strategy. From your strategy falls your portfolio of options. And we say there's four horizons of the options that you've got. The 4 portfolios you've got to look at. One is the idea of growth. So it's like everyone's got a growth portfolio. You've got a performance portfolio, which is like, how do you optimize the thing that we're doing? Growth is new market, new customer, etc. You've got renewal portfolios, which is again what people traditionally think of innovation as, of how do we reinvent ourselves? And then you've also got the maximized portfolio, which is, how do I stop doing something but harvest the value of it on the way out, or extend the life of this thing for as long as I can and extract. So you've got to have those four portfolios generally, and each of those portfolios has a goal, and each of those goals therefore has strategies and balancing. So you just go through that rigorous process, and that's what it is. It's just like, let's just take assessment of what we have, and does some of it fit? Does some of it not fit? What should we stop doing? What should we start doing? What should we slow down? What should we speed up? And having that view. Otherwise, it's I don't know what people are doing. They're just throwing their hands up and hoping.
I think that what most of the companies are doing right now is going back to what they already know, to their core abilities, solutions, whatever. And they're doing the best they can in there. And everything that is not considered main thing, and in most cases, they don't see innovation as their main, because they're not that successful, they don't make that much revenue from it. And they're saying, okay, we're not going to do this. We're going to do what we know best. And sometimes it's not relevant anymore. And then the crisis happens.
Yeah, that's really interesting when you say it's not relevant anymore. That gets back to Mike's sort of concept of true for now, which is it true? Is it true any longer? Right. So not only what's true for now, but is this still true? So in a moment of crisis, we have to ask ourselves: are these things that we believed before the crisis still true? And if they're not, I mean, it's totally understandable that an organization would go into, into self-preservation mode, right? So if you're in the aerospace or airline business or the travel business or what are you going to do? You got to conserve what you've got as long as you can. However, you also, you are paying people to show up, even if it's a reduced work week. You're paying people to show up. What are you gonna have them spend their time doing? If it's not just the maintenance level organization or operational work that needs to be done, can they be focused on what's next? And starting, and as Mike said, creating portfolios of options for what's next, so that you don't have to be right. You just have to have some possibilities, so that you can start to execute and try some things. And we've seen lots of small micro examples of that. Just even watching about like how the restaurant industry adjusted to spill. You live in a country where in a place where people can't eat out in the streets, and where that's part of the culture. Where Mike and I are, people, in the San Francisco Bay Area and up in Oregon, it was more or less everybody was indoors. But to see the restaurants adopt to like spilling out in the streets, taking over the streets, doing these pop-ups, how are we going to actually deliver? Or are we going to do, there was all this like micro innovation happening. But you didn't see that in big corporations about saying, how can we be really experimental right now and take advantage of this time that we've got to try some things that would have never tried before at a time when you have permission to be experimental. There's not a single person sitting in their house trying to do their job over Zoom who's not going to tolerate a little experimentation right now. It's like,
for sure,
seize the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's more than that. You have the capacity, you have the resources. And most of them do have resources.
Yes.
And there are so many open opportunities out there. So many things change, so you can innovate, and there are so many unmet needs that you can fulfill. So why?
And I think I'm old enough certainly to have gone through a number of economic downturns, and you can see the clients who succeeded at those times were the ones who actually said, this is an opportunity, right? We're gonna spend more energy and more effort on innovation or acquisition or whatever it was, right? They became very active and very strategic. They didn't put it on pause. They didn't hide. And what they did is they opened up massive gaps between themselves and their competition. So when they came out the other side, so that's easy for me to say, because I don't have a multi-billion-dollar corporation to put at risk.
I wouldn't want to be a CEO right now. Never, ever, but surely not now. It's it's really hard.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. Okay, we're just running out of time, and I have so many questions that I didn't have time. We should do it like in chapter 2. But I will ask, what is the most surprising thing you learned about innovation after all these years of experience in SolveNext?
I think you already hit it, Mike.
Yeah, I think that the most surprising thing is how utterly horrible people are at finding the problems for the people that matter most to them, and actually executing on it. And the surprising part to me was also just the return of investment on it. It's last time we spoke, I showed if you just put your money in trains. You would have basically outperformed the American economy's return on by 200 times. Just like I'm not going to if you just we're not going to invest at all in innovation. We're just going to put the money that we would have spent in stocks of trains, and it's astounding how bad people are. We've been doing this for a long time, and we bought into the thing. It's happening. It's good. Then you just take a step back and you look at the numbers, and it's horrible. And it kind of comes down to, why is it horrible? Then you go, oh, because it's not systematic. There's no rigor. And when people do try and apply rules, they just do the wrong rules. The rules of optimization. It's that what's the return? What's the return going to be on this? New ventures say, I don't know. We don't know what the problem is yet. We haven't validated the problem. So I can't tell you. And they're like, well, you can't get funding then. Yeah. So then people make up a spreadsheet, and we see it happen all the time. And that was, I hoped we'd be better. We're not.
Okay.
There's plenty of work to do. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. It won't be boring in any case.
No, pretty much.
Yeah. So where could people find you and hear more about your work?
Well, SolveNext.com is probably the best place to go in terms of just finding the website and exploring that. We have a bunch of free resources for people. The Intrapreneurial Readiness Assessment is there. So that's a good place to go. I'm Nikolai Gregory Galle on LinkedIn, so my full name.
That's a long name.
It is.
I thought I have a long name, but you're much better than me in that.
We do work. We do work in. We have a team in Central America and South America and in Latin America. If you want some long names, go to Latin America. they specialize in long names. So Mike is simply Mike Byrne on LinkedIn as well. So those are good places to get hold of us and to have more dialogue. Yeah, for sure.
So it's been such a pleasure having you here, Mike and Greg. I really enjoyed our talk, and maybe we should have another one afterwards. After all, so
we
thank
can keep
you.
Talking.
We're always up for a good conversation. As I said, we hope sometime in 2021 we could come and have a meal and a conversation with you.
Yeah, in Israel, you should come. We have better weather, I would say, and maybe
you have better food too.
Yeah, so you should come.
Yeah.
So thank you, and to all of you out there, change makers out there, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time. And you could visit invincibleinnovation.com to know more, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Hattie.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Bye. I'm Mazor Kario, and you've been listening to the Invincible Innovation Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, invincibleinnovation.com, where you can learn more about our programs and my book, Innovating Through Chaos. I'll be waiting for you next week in our next episode. Thank you for listening.